Well, hi, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, and I have the great privilege of serving with our state treasurer, Dale Fowell. And one of the things that we've been wanting to do for a while is just to sit down and have just a relaxed conversation about what is going on in North Carolina related to the office of the treasurer. And a lot of folks, just like Lieutenant Governor, aren't always aware what the treasurer does, but it's quite a significant role. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking with Dale and kind of demystifying the treasurer's office and what they do on a daily basis, and really, and why this matters to you. So Dale, thanks for joining us today, and hopefully this will be the first in a series of conversations we'll have. And I've always been impressed. Every council of state meeting, you come in, I give you a little rash, I give you a hard time about how often how long you speak at those meetings, but I always learn so much. And you have done a phenomenal job, I believe, of transparency with the treasurer's office. I was lieutenant governor for 4 years prior to you taking this role, and I never really understood what the treasurer does or what the significance of what that meant to our state. And what you do every month, not only at the Council of State meetings, but by communicating with the people of North Carolina, I think opens the eyes of a lot of people in our state, and has started a lot of conversations about how important this role is that you play and what it means to every citizen of North Carolina. So why don't you just tell everybody how big this kind of nut is that you have to crack every day? How many dollars do you represent, do you take care of for the state, and what that means to the people of our state?
Well, thank you for having me on. And as a motorcycle racer, I can tell you the rash that you give me is nothing compared to the rash that I've had over the last 40 years of racing motorcycles, but especially when you fall off, obviously. But
I remember multiple days you came in the office with broken ribs from crashing.
So, you know, the state treasurer, I'm considered the keeper of the public purse. And what does that mean? What that means is that we manage the 26th largest pool of public money in the entire world. What does that mean? That means that probably 1 out of 10 adult North Carolinians gets a check from the treasurer's office every 30 days. So people see the word treasurer on the $1 bill and they may think that we sign the $1 bill, but we don't. We manage over 120 billion of those $1 bills. So what does that consist of? It consists of mainly the pension, retirement of most every state and local government public service employee. The teachers, the troopers, all the other core functions of our government.
So some people might get this confused with the Department of Revenue, right? You probably have calls coming to your office that are really Department of Revenue tax-related calls, and that sort of thing. Why don't you tell people what the difference is between what the Department of Revenue does and what the treasurer does? You explained what your role is.
Sure.
Talk to people what they do.
Well, the Department of Revenue is a function of the governor's office. So if people got a problem with the Department of Revenue, they need to blame the governor. But all the money that comes through the Department of Revenue eventually comes through the treasurer's office. But we don't handle people's taxes. We don't even handle the payroll system. That's the controller of North Carolina. But so we manage the pension plan. We manage the 401, 403 retirement plans, which are voluntarily contributed to by the employees. We're also the largest purchaser of health care in North Carolina because we manage the state pension, the state health plan and pharmaceutical benefits. Then we have something called the Local Government Commission, which people don't wake up thinking about any of these issues until something goes wrong. But it's very unique in North Carolina. Over 1,300 governmental entities have to pass through the Local Government Commission in order to issue debt. A water and sewer district, City of Raleigh, County of Forsyth, Raleigh-Durham Airport, universities, they all have to come through the Local Government Commission to get approval. That was created after the Depression because of the bankruptcy of Asheville.
So what is it, what does this big bucket of money in the end really ultimately mean to the people of North Carolina? We're talking about health care, a bucket of money, a bucket of promises that we have made to future generations, saying we're going to take care of you, whether it's your health care costs, whether it's your pension for folks like teachers and state employees, and tell everybody kind of where North Carolina stands in relation to other states, and are we doing a good job, are we doing a bad job, what's our unfunded liabilities look like, and what's that mean to the average citizen?
Well, to the average citizen, what they should know is that almost 20% of the state budget comes to the treasurer's office, just for health care, pension, pharmaceutical benefits, and disability. Not even debt service. It's over $5 billion of the state budget, and it's increasing because of the blessed event of life expectancy and some unblessed events, which is rising cost of health care and pharmacy. So the average person, whether they're a state employee or not, they're being asked as taxpayers to pay for this. And as keeper of the public purse, we make sure that we're signing our contracts, that our loyalty is to the participants of these plans and taxpayers like them in North Carolina. And we're spending nearly $720 million every 30 days.
Yeah, $750 million every month.
Yes.
That's being checks that are being written out to
Correct.
people that are on these plans.
Correct. And for medical providers providing service.
And how sustainable is that long term for our state?
Well, on the pension side, we are blessed to have one of the 5 best funded pension plans in the United States. But just
where does that put us? Are we number 1 or number 5?
Number 5.
We are number 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what that means is that that's all great, except our retirees cannot pay their Duke Power bill with relativity. They have to actually pay it with money. So we're in the check delivering business on the pension side. We have one of the 5 best funded in the United States. The problem with that plan is that we're facing headwinds because of increased life expectancies. When I was in high school, we were paying out pension checks to 248 90-year-olds and above. Last month, we paid out pension checks to 7,200 90-year-olds and above.
And the plan hasn't changed.
And the plan hasn't changed. There's no minimum retirement age. And then when you combine that with the health care liability, because these people are eligible for lifetime health care, then you can see where these costs come up. So the pension unfunded liability is about $15 billion, but the health care unfunded liability is $35 billion. Now, what does that mean? That's one of the 5 most insolvent in the United States. We are right behind Illinois, same Illinois that your viewers have been paying attention to. So we have responsibility for one of the 5 best pension plans, but one of the 5 most insolvent state health plans.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, what is it that has made one so strong and the other one so weak?
Well, the answer is not emotional and not political, which are things that your viewers are used to in this day and time. It's mathematical. For almost 40 years, promises were made to be eligible for lifetime health care under these plans, and no money was ever put aside for that purpose, and that's why we have the problem.
And so 40 years, what was that span? How long? From what year to what year?
Over the last,
past 40 years.
Even now.
Okay.
I mean, we're on a pay-go basis. When we're presented a bill, we pay, but all the people who are earning this eligibility for no money is being put aside for that obligation that we're telling them that they will be eligible for this health care.
We'll talk about the interest rate on that in a second, how that's worked for us over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But just for the folks watching, state employee, you could say you graduated college and you went to work for the state, and maybe you didn't even graduate college, but say you graduated college at 22 and you work for the state for the next 30 years, and at 52 you retire and you start drawing the funds for that retirement, and you live to be 100.
Right.
You just worked for 30 years and you just were retired for 50 years.
And
the math is a very difficult.
And if you're a female,
challenge.
you could live. Life expectancy of males is, we just lost half our audience, is going down. Life expectancies of females is going up.
Yeah.
And so that's why this is happening. This is the first time in the history of the United States where people, especially females, could literally be retired for longer than they worked.
Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing the fruits of that play out right now in real time, and that's part of your challenge. One of the things you talk about a lot is the interest rate. How we have set an interest rate for the growth of our plans that is not realistic.
Sure.
Tell us about what effect that has.
Once again, since I was in high school, the assumed rate of return. This is the rate of return the money has to earn in order for it to perk to produce these benefits.
So this is about 10 years ago when you were in high school.
Yes.
Okay. Last 10 years.
The assumed rate of return is 7.25%, and it has not been adjusted until I became the treasurer last year, and we have not achieved that on average over the last 20 years. So you should be asking yourself, and your viewers should be asking themselves, if you haven't done something over the last 20 years, you're not going to do it over the next 20 years. Why hasn't it been adjusted before now?
Well, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Why is there not a self-adjusting mechanism to this, right? I mean, why is there not a mechanism in place that says whatever it has been historically
Sure.
over the past 3 years, aggregate that and then make that what you're going to move forward with?
Well, I guess the main reason is that you have to have these numbers on average, but the second reason is that as soon as we lowered the assumed rate of return, which is the first thing I did as state treasurer, now I've done it again this year. As soon as we did that, the fundedness of the plan dropped. And no treasurer ever wants to be associated with the fundedness dropping.
Even if it's realistic. Right?
Even
So,
if it's realistic.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's interesting, and this is how all this, people, your viewers don't wake up thinking about unfunded liabilities, assumed rates of return, life expectancy. They wake up and think about how we're going to best educate our kids, build our roads, provide public safety. And what we need to get across today is that these issues that I'm talking about, eventually, as it's happening all across this country, there's going to take money away from things that people do wake up caring about in the morning to pay the pension cost, the health care cost, the pharmaceutical cost, and the interest on the debt.
Now, you have stirred up a lot of controversy in the markets out there across our country. Those people that manage our money for us. That
Really, that's news to me.
we're getting some maybe some undue returns for
Sure.
what was actually being provided to the state.
Yeah.
You came in and shook some things up. You said we're not going to play that game that way anymore.
Right.
You have to provide a service that provides a return for our state.
Right.
Tell the folks kind of what you did, how you did that, and what it means to the state because of these actions.
Well, another word that people don't use every day is fiduciary, but it's very important to us. It means that we're loyal and we're exercising duty of care to the participants and the taxpayers in North Carolina. Loyal and exercising duty of care. So in reference to your question, the fees that this pension plan was paying from the time that Harlan Bowles wore this very lapel pin, over the last 16 years, the fees when he left office were $50 million. When I was sworn in as state treasurer, the fees were $700 million per year. So we set about to cut Wall Street fees. We cut $75 million out in the first year. Of course, when you save it 1 year, you save it for the next 4 years. So we are on a run rate of saving over $300 million. I think by the time 4 years is out, we're going to save $500 million just in Wall Street fees. But to your
It's
point,
almost real money to government.
yeah, or to the participants, because once again, you haven't earned this assumed rate of return for 20 years, so every dollar counts.
Yeah.
But to your point, the reason that this is so important is that we always focus on who brings value to the participants. If we're exercising loyalty to the taxpayers, and we find a money manager who charges a little higher fee, but they bring value to the participants, obviously that's something that we look at very closely. We don't cut fees for the sake of cutting fees.
Yeah.
We cut fees when there's no value associated with that.
Rightly so. Let's switch topics a little bit. Talk about healthcare. Talk about your mentality when you came in, the kinds of things that you discovered, and primarily about the average participant, how they participate in the system, the things they take for granted, not understanding that they actually control their healthcare system, the way that it operates for them. You came in and did some things. You shook some things up there too. You started one with transparency again. You started sending out notices to all state employees saying, this is your health care plan. You do impact the cost of this. You need to pay attention to the dollars that something cost you. And talk about what that means to the whole state, how much money we waste by not paying attention, and those types of things.
Well, a lot of public servants always talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. I actually know what it looks like, and I do something about it. So the first thing was to make sure, whether it's on the pension or the health plan, on the pension, we found people who have been cashing their deceased parents' pension checks for 15 years. Same thing on the health plan. The first thing we do when you're in a hole that we're in, you stop digging. And you make sure that there's no money leaving these plans that's not supposed to leave, whether it's a pensioner who's deceased or a Wall Street fee or some other kind of issue. On the health plan, the first thing we had to do is to make sure that the people that are on the plan are supposed to be on the plan. And that was the verification audit for the dependents. And I filled out one, and a lot of other state employees filled it out also. And the reason we had to do that is that there had never been a bona fide, living, breathing, verified audit of the state health plan.
Which is unbelievable.
Which is unbelievable. Now, I want to tell your viewers how large this is. This state health plan is as large as the domestic employment base of Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, and J.P. Morgan combined. That's how huge this is. And in terms of its complexity, last year we had 160,000 life-changing events. There's not 160,000 people on the plan, there's 750,000. We had 160,000 life-changing events, births, deaths, divorces, retirements. So it's a very huge plan, it's a very complex plan, and we had not taken advantage of our buying power and for the benefit of the participants.
Just doing that audit, what did that audit end up, you think, saving the state? I mean, do you have a number you can guesstimate on that?
Well, I try to get our folks to focus on pennies and paper clips. If we find one person taking money out of this pension plan that's not supposed to, it's one too many.
Yeah.
If we find one bad actor who's taking money out of the healthcare plan, that's one too many. Yeah. We end up finding about 750 people who were not supposed to be on the plan. But now we have a living, breathing document. So we'll be able to do this like corporate America does every year or two.
Yeah.
But you will never, a person who has a 10-year-old child will never have to prove to us again that that's their 10-year-old child. It's done. So now we have a living, breathing document. And the reason that this matters so much is that we're spending, as I said earlier, about $730 million every 30 days, and we need to make sure that money's not going out carelessly.
Well, this may be a little in the weeds for the average person watching, but maybe for the state employee it's not. Talk about their health care plan, talk about what they need to do when they go into the doctor, what they need to do, the questions they need to ask when they get their invoice from the doctor, and how that impacts all of this that we're talking about.
Great question. Number one, we just redesigned the state health plan card. Most people thought that every time they pulled that card out of their pocket, they were sticking it to Blue Cross. Why would they not think that? It had Blue Cross across the top. When they got an explanation of benefit, which didn't explain the benefit of anything, had Blue Cross across the top. If they got a check because they'd overpaid their copay, it had Blue Cross across. Why would you not think that Blue Cross is our insurer? They've never been our insurer. We are self-insured. So the number one thing is to build this image in our state employee and retirees' mind that this is their state health plan paid for by them and taxpayers like them.
This is their money.
It's their money.
It's their money they're spending every time they go to the doctor, every time they get billed too much money, and they have to be responsible for it.
Yeah. And we want them thinking as evangelically about that as they do the credit card or the debit card they take out of their purse or their wallet. So that's the number one thing. The explanation, our new explanation of benefit just went out last week. That's number two. Number three, we're actually doing an employee benefits statement that shows the present value of these huge obligations to each employee. You'll get one, I'll get one, as Lieutenant Governor and Treasurer. Because we don't think that the state employee actually knows how much this costs.
Yeah.
And so we're educating that. And then, as you'll see over the next few weeks, we're really going to be driving down the cost as far as our providers are concerned. We've been trying to find out what we're supposed to pay for health care. We know what we spend. We don't have a clue what we're supposed to pay. And I just ask you, would you go to any grocery store where there was no prices up and down the aisle?
Yeah.
You wouldn't, and your viewers wouldn't either. Well, I'm not going to do that anymore either.
Yeah.
And the reason this is important to your viewers, this state health plan that we've been talking about for the last few minutes spends more money every year than the General Assembly appropriates to the entire university system.
Yeah.
That's how huge this is.
Yeah, and for the average state employee, some of them who have been sitting around for a decade now going, I haven't gotten a pay increase, I'd like to get a pay increase. If they have in their mind that just as you said, every month you're sending out a check for $750 million, close to $1 billion every year, you're talking about $10 billion or so that's going out the door for those things. Every billion you save really matters, and that can go into things that matter for them, like increasing pay perhaps, or investing in education and those types of things.
Yeah. As I said earlier, and you're seeing this in Hartford, Connecticut, and Illinois, Kentucky, South Carolina, Alabama. You're seeing it all across the country, and this is not just a state issue. This affects Wake County, City of Raleigh, and rural North Carolina. This is a big issue, and what I'm trying to do as the keeper of the public purse is to make sure the three things that I have some responsibility for, that I'm doing the best job I can, especially for rural North Carolina. Rural North Carolina always needs to borrow money at the lowest possible rates. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure that happens, because anytime you pay less in interest, that's more money for water and sewer, schools, roads, and all the other functions. Secondly, rural North Carolina needs access to affordable health care. And the biggest employer in rural North Carolina is the state, or the county,
Sure is,
or the
yeah.
city,
Mhm.
or the school district. And, I mean,
right.
like those, the big four.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that they have access to affordable health care in rural North Carolina. So access to capital, health care, and obviously keeping the pension plan solvent are very important.
Well, for the state employees, when I speak to the state employees out there, they should be your biggest fan because you have done more, I believe, to help secure their future than anybody I've seen in a long time in this state. So thank you for those efforts. We're going to kind of wrap up here. I'm going to let you say
Sure.
to the folks one thing. If you could kind of leave them with one thing today to think about before the next time we get together, and maybe dive into some more specifics. But this was a good overview.
Sure.
But one thing you want to leave them with to think about before the next time we meet, what would that be?
Well, what I'd leave them with is that these issues that we've been discussing over the last 20 minutes are going to make the generational difference in the future of North Carolina. Our ability to solve these problems is going to make the generational difference in the future of our state. And unlike a lot of other things in our society right now where people just want to be affirmed about how they feel about something, I appreciate the opportunity for us to inform them about not the politics,
That's right.
not the emotion, but the mathematics of what this means.
Absolutely. Well, State Treasurer Dale Fowell, thank you for your time
Thank
today.
you. Appreciate
It's always
it.
great. I
Yep.
always learn a lot, and we'll just do this on a regular basis if that's okay with
Yeah, I
you.
love
We'll
that.
just
As long as you
keep-
pay my parking fee,
I will take care of your parking ticket.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us.
Got that on the record.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging with us today. We're going to make this a regular thing. We're just going to get together and hang out and chat and try to inform you about what's going on in your state, what's important to you, and why this stuff matters to you. Why do these numbers matter to you? So hopefully we'll see you right here next time.